Thank you. Well, what could be more nerve-wracking than giving a talk or a speech about how to give a TED Talk? Because the TED Talk is like the Oscars of TED, and who are we, modest as we are, to tell you how to do it. But we did last year, so now it's our turn to do it here for you. Let me start with the talk itself then. Okay, so last year the Evelu 1 shook, shaked, rattled, collapsed, and then the aliens entered. I don't know who of you have been there, but it was really impressive. It was the work of the art group Collider, and as an organizer I knew that they spent weeks and weeks on end to do that, but I was really impressed to see the end result. And seeing that made me really proud. Proud of the fact that that was the final of the second TEDxBrainport. And more to come with this one, of course. And it all started with a dream. 3 years ago, I think, about, I got this dream. I saw lots of TED Talks, like you all do. And I thought, I want to organize a TEDx myself, especially here in Eindhoven, because the T and the D of technology and design is really well presented in this region. So I went to see Hugh Brouwers from Brainport, and I said, let's start a TEDx, and I think only 5 minutes later, it was done. TEDxBrainport started. We formed a group of really enthusiastic and good professionals, and so it all started, and that was really fun. The first TEDxBrainport, really good at the high-tech campus. We even went to TEDactive to meet other TEDx organizers, which was also fun. They're all addicts as well, so it was really nice to see all your peers, finally. And then, of course, last year's TEDxBrainport. And let me share you two highlights of that TEDxBrainport. The first one is the speaker rehearsal, the speaker prep, as Michiel was there as well. It was amazing to see all the speakers rehearsing, and it was also nice to see that we could change the talks by just tweaking them a little bit. And then the second thing was, the second highlight, was to see actually these talks on the stage themselves that day. And we could really see the difference and all the effort and energy that the speakers put in there. So that was really nice to see, and a great change. And to help you with preparing your TED Talk, the TED people made the 10 TED Commandments. And these are kind of guidelines for you to prepare your speech. And our talk is basically set on these guidelines. So this is the first one, dream big. And Colin will continue with the next one.
The second one is about passion and emotion. When you saw Arthur standing up here telling you about his dream to organise a TEDx event here in Eindhoven, he was passionate. You could see the stars in his eyes. And that is what we're looking for from all of our speakers, to be passionate about it. TEDxBrainport stage, it's not a corporate boardroom, it's not a lecture hall. So get out there and tell us a little bit about why you're doing these wonderful things, not just what they are. Tell us how you got involved in it in the first place. Was it something you always wanted to do, like leap tall buildings in a single bound? Or was it something more serious? Was it some personal tragedy or circumstance? Or was it just a chance encounter with an old friend or colleague? I'll tell you a little bit about my involvement in TED, to give you an idea. A few years back, I was kind of looking for some way to kind of give back to the community. I didn't know what to do. My wife and I discussed it. We thought about fostering kids, visiting old folks' homes, helping out at the homeless shelter. But it all seemed like treating the symptoms, not curing the disease. And so I'd seen some TED Talks online, and I thought, you know, these are the people who have the solutions. And then we found out that there was going to be a TED event in Antwerp. So we thought, okay, we'll go along to that. So we went to this event, and afterwards we got talking to the organiser of the event. And one thing led to the other, and the next thing I know, we're volunteering to help out. And then we helped out the next year. And then one day I was up here in Eindhoven, and I was talking to Koen Snooks, who's hiding somewhere at the back, about a project to work on. And Koen said to me, Colin, do you know anything, have you ever heard of TED? And I said, well, yeah. And he said, well, we're doing something here. Would you be interested? And I said, yes. So I'm not quite the TED addict that Arthur is. I'm a TEDx organiser addict. I've now done 3 TEDx Flanders events, 2 youth events. I was down in Le Van Le Neuve to help them out. And this year, this will be my 3rd Brainport event. And this is my first time on stage. So you will have your chance on the 4th of June. Show us your passion, tell us your story, and make it a great story. And talking of great stories, the best talks on the TED stage, the ones that get the standing ovations, those are the ones that don't just touch us here, but get to us here. You know, so show some emotion, tell a joke, make us all laugh.
Talk about money.
Maybe. If your story's a bit more serious, you know, pull on the old heartstrings, you know, make us cry along with you. Or make us angry at the injustices that you've been fighting against. Make it worth it, your while, those short minutes you're on stage. So, I've told you a couple of things about the story. I'm going to pass you back to Arthur to tell you about a couple of things you shouldn't be doing on stage.
Well, TED is all about ideas worth spreading. And the best way to get your message across is when people like you who you are. So you all came here, of course, to listen to my long list of all my establishments and my personal qualities. Not. So the rule is, basically, don't boast. And that will surely switch everybody off. And the next one, another way of annoying the audience, if you tell them about your company, about your organization. So no commercials on the stage. That's a really important one. And so don't tell us about your organization or your company unless we specifically ask you to, as organizers. And don't even think about selling, pitching, or asking for funding from the stage. It not only will make your story weaker, but it will reduce your chance of getting selected to TEDxCon to 0. And we don't want that, and you don't want that either.
You might recognise this gentleman. I'll come back to him in a minute. One of the things that you can do, and we ask all the speakers, I mean, all the attendees will be there all day, but we also ask the speakers to be there all day. That's quite a commitment from you guys, but it's also an opportunity. It's an opportunity for you to talk to the other speakers, to talk to the attendees, and most important of all, it's a chance for you to make a comment on what they've said, unless you're up first. So maybe you agree with something that one of the previous speakers said, and you want to give them a little praise, you know, or a bit of advice. Free advice is always nice. Or maybe you want to work something they said into your talk to kind of cement it. Or you might not agree with them. I've got an example from this year's TED conference. There's a guy called Danny Hillis. He gave an impassioned plea to the audience that we needed to come up with a plan B for the internet in case something went wrong. Because everything we do these days is somehow connected to the internet, whether we're paying our bills, whether we're tanking gas, whatever. And if it went down, well, that would be a big disaster. Then later on, Vint Cerf, and for those who don't know, Vint Cerf kind of invented the internet. He was doing his talk, and he made a little comment that got a laugh out of the audience. He said, well, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I invented the internet is doing just fine. So there's a lot of things you can do to get that. We saw some talks earlier on about disruption, about positive disruption. I know myself, I don't like to change. I like the status quo, even when things aren't maybe as good as they could be. So I think what we saw this afternoon, and I'd be quite happy if the Catholic Church could actually change. If they can change, we can all change. And last but not least, this gentleman here, you might recognise him, he's here in the audience tonight. Michael was one of the speakers at TEDxBrainport last year, and he's going to be up here in a few minutes to tell us a little bit about his experience. So I hope you won't be too hard on us, Michael. Moving on, here is my slide for this next section, which is about make the complex plain. Now, one of the ways that you can tell if your talk is complicated is by the number of slides in it. We've got 10, right? So that's pretty good. But some of the best TED Talks actually don't have any. And also for the engineers and scientists in the audience, this is about as complicated as you want to get. I'll tell you what this is now. So this is actually from a book called Resonate by Nancy Duarte. Nancy did a lot of analysis of TED Talks, or just speeches in general. And this one is Steve Jobs' iPhone launch talk. So what she wanted to do is she wanted to find out what makes a good talk in general. What are the elements of it? How do you put it together? So for the speakers, the good news is that in the TED guidelines, TED Speaker Guidelines document, you'll actually find a couple of examples of what makes a good talk, including one by Nancy. So take a look at that. I'm not going to tell you about those now. I'm going to give you a couple of pieces of advice from my own experience. The first one is keep it simple, stupid. KISS. We all know that. You know, TED attendees tend to be pretty smart people, but if you're talking about nuclear science or neurophysics or something like that, well, you can probably guess that not everybody in the audience is going to be an expert in your field. So, you know, be clear, be specific, give examples, and tell a story. You know, a beginning, a middle, and an end. For the beginning, throw out a challenge. Maybe give an example or a what if. Something that's going to hook the audience so that they'll sit up and start listening. Then tell them what your idea is. And you've all got great ideas, so that shouldn't be a problem. You know, tell us how it could be implemented, why it should be implemented, and then at the end, finish up by telling us how it's going to change the world. Now, all of these are suggestions. We've given you a lot of examples. Every talk is different. Every speaker is different. You might need some help, and if you want some help, come and talk to us. We can help you write your script, we can help you with your presentation, and we can help you rehearse for the event. Because at the end of the day, it's as much in our interest for you to do a good talk as it is for you to do a good talk. Of that.
And the talk is not only about content and structure, it's also about how you deliver that talk. So the deliverance is the most important part, I think. But and of course, giving a talk is very nerve-wracking. But there are some ways of making you more at ease. The first one is the thought that even at TED itself, things do go wrong. So they have glitches, they have hiccups, they have even PowerPoints that go backwards. All these things happen at TED.com or the TED conference itself as well. You don't see them because they added them in the videos they make. So whatever you think about, oh, might things go wrong or not, don't worry about that. We do have undo buttons too. And let me give you some more advice to make you more at ease and more relaxed. Let's take your time. Talk slowly and pause. It will make your story more stick. And another way of making your story more stick is to give an example. And this is we're going to show you Jamie Oliver, the famous British chef / activist, who is giving his talk on the 2010 TED because he won the TED Prize. And I'll just show you a little bit what I mean by showing by example.
The kind of modern day problems. There's our milk, there's our carton. In that is nearly as much sugar as one of your favourite cans of fizzy pop, and they're having 2 a day. So, let me just show you. We've got one kid here having, 8 tablespoons of sugar a day. There's your week. There's your month. And I've took the liberty of putting in just the 5 years of elementary school sugar, just from milk. Now, I don't know about you guys, but judging the circumstances, right, any judge in the whole world would look at the statistics and the evidence, and they would find any government of old guilty of child abuse. That's my belief.
So that image is stuck in my life forever, and probably in yours now too. Another way to feel more at ease when you deliver your talk is thinking about your posture. If I walk around like this, it might seem okay to you, but it makes you feel more, makes it feel less at ease, less confident. So stay put, stand your ground. It makes you feel more confident. And lastly, don't read from paper. You might have a backup outline, so you see only a few words on it. That will help you to get along during the test. But if you just read from paper, it makes everything a lot more boring. Even more boring. So last year, 2 students won the award for the best student talk at TEDxBrainport. I don't know if you have seen it, but funnily enough, one of them forgot his lines, and he pulled out his sheet of paper and said, "Damn, I forgot," and that was really funny. Okay, to prevent this thing from happening, there's only one way of doing that, and that's to rehearse, and then rehearse again. Colin and I rehearsed quite a couple of times, but not enough. Because rehearsing is the way of making sure that your story is going to be heard in the way you want to present it. Steve Jobs, as Colin mentioned earlier on the introduction on the iPhone, spent hours and hours on rehearsing, and that's why his talk is so good. And it's going into history probably as being one of the best talks ever, saying as an Apple addict. When you rehearse, read out loud. So don't just read the lines by yourself, read them out loud, and preferably read them to a friend or a colleague. So, because it really makes a difference when you can look at people when you do your talk. And lastly, time your speech well. And that's what Colin's going to talk about.
TED Talks are fairly short, so you only have a limited time to get that message across. Don't abuse it. It's the maximum time you've got, not the minimum. If you run over, you're basically stealing the next speaker's time. And how would you feel if you were in their shoes? So if you do see that clock running down, here's a little piece of advice. Skip to the last slide and give your conclusion, because it's better to drop a few points along the way than be cut off mid-sentence. And we will. We'll cut off your mic, and the MC will guide you gently but firmly off the stage. I think when we originally did this talk, we planned it to be about 18 minutes long. I think we're well over by now, actually. So
there's no mark.
there's no clock. So at one point when we rehearsed it, it was only 15 minutes long. We thought, that's great, we've got 3 minutes extra, we can put more stuff in. Don't do it, because then it'll be too long, and also there's a good chance that you'll start repeating yourself, and that will just turn off your audience. So a piece of advice I got at TED Active this year was, whatever length of time you have for your talk, actually write it a couple of minutes shorter. And then when you're on stage doing the talk, you'll feel at ease, because you know that, well, I've got 2 minutes spare. And if you do have that 2 minutes spare, you can always use it during the talk to ad-lib a little bit, improvise, make a comment on somebody else's talk, or if something goes wrong with the technology, you've still got a few moments to catch up. So I'd just like to finish with one last piece of advice. When you're done, even if there's a few seconds left on the clock, stop and let the audience know that you're finished. So I'd just like to thank everyone tonight and wish you all the best with your talks on the day. Thank you.
Thank you.